who is Dennis Nilsen. I haven't got a lot of time to give you all the background and lots of detail about him, so I'll give you a short background about his life. So Dennis Nilsen was born in 1945 in a very, very rural Scottish community village called Fraserburgh. He was born to a mum that he described as affectionless and a dad that wasn't really present because he was a soldier in the army. They had a bit of a rocky marriage and they eventually divorced. Nobody really paid much attention to Des as he was kind of growing up. He talks about having a lonely childhood, quite an isolated childhood, quite a troubled childhood, a neglected childhood. But there was one person who paid quite a bit of attention to him, and that was his grandfather. His grandfather would spend a lot of time with him every single day, going on long walks and taking him almost everywhere with him. He felt a great deal of love and a great deal of respect for his grandfather. The only downside to it was a double-edged sword, because simultaneously his grandfather was also sexually abusing him on a regular basis. He would take him for walks up the beach near him, take him to a World War II concrete pillar box and sexually abuse him. He would give him tea laced with something, maybe alcohol, that would make him kind of drowsy and woozy and things like that, and regularly sexually abuse him. His grandfather died quite young. He died when Nilsen was 5 years old. And Nilsen didn't really understand what had happened to his grandfather, and he recalls his mum bringing him to the room where his grandfather was left to rest, and his mum said, "Look, your grandfather has gone to a better place." And he couldn't understand why his grandfather couldn't have taken him to that better place, because his grandfather took him everywhere. It's said that in that moment his ideas on love and death fused, although I feel that's like a bit of an exaggeration, over-exaggeration. One of the things he started to do was cover himself in talcum powder, poke his eyes until they were red, and just stare at himself for ages in a mirror as if he were a corpse. And this sort of evolved from there. I was snapping into the ritual. My mind was already buzzing with sexual, almost fevered excitement at the warmth and vital proximity of his body, but I just couldn't face him going. And then he talks about having a sharp internal panic inside. And then he says, "I pulled the covers down over his smooth, nude body, and my pulse rose accordingly. My eyes wandered to the tie on the floor, and I strained against all pervading notions that I could cause him to stay by strangling him unconscious. I reached over and took the blue tie from the floor. His back was towards me, and I carefully slipped the tie under and around his sleeping neck. I quickly straddled him and, twisting the ends of the tie around my wrist, pulled tightly." And then he describes killing him. Then he says, "In a space of a minute or two, I heard his hands flop onto the carpet. He was unconscious. My mind was at that time furious with panic and relief that he'd stopped struggling, and a buzz of high-speed fear and confusion roared in my head." And then he said, "He was dead and had ceased to participate in any existence of personality. And so it was I became a killer, to appease all the trouble and stress at the time through the fission of addictive remedy. If I'd known him as a person with a clear identity outside of inhibition-removing drink, I could not have laid a finger on him. And I didn't want to kill him. It was a ritual with a passive male body that I craved." Yes, please.
Fascinating. I'm looking at it rather not from the point of view as a researcher, but more from the psychotherapist point of view.
Yeah.
So what would you say were the contributing factors that made him become a paraphilic in that way?
So far from the initial research, when you look into it, paraphilic interests and paraphilic disorders are heavily associated with early childhood sexual abuse. They're very associated. Specifically as well, paraphilic interests, not just disorders, not where it crosses the line over, paraphilic interests. So to have deviant paraphilic interests like that, not illegal, just deviant ones, heavily associated with that. It's not always A equals B, doesn't mean you've been abused and that's why you have, but they're heavily associated. So you can see the research on that already. And also this idea that he had this fantasy of dirty old man and a young pristine boy, those were the words. And it's really interesting that he constantly flipped these roles and said, "I am both the young pristine boy and the dirty old man." Oh, it's phenomenal. The raft of Medusa, if you ever get a chance to look at it, is a picture that he saw that he says really got him going on. The bottom left, there's an old bearded man on this raft, and he's holding this this boy who's sort of naked, maybe he's 20s and something, he's naked and he's muscly and he's clearly drowned. And that's something that he described, got him going. And that's what I'm talking about here. It's the passivity of the male form, specifically more boyish. He even talks about shaving off the hair. That's part of the rituals that he did. He shaved off their bodily hair to make them boyish. There's so much to be said on this, and I think from a psychotherapeutic perspective, I could go on for hours, and I would love to. It's like a passion of mine as a therapist, and I definitely will be in the future.